there's a feeling among a lot of men that talking about any kind of mental health issue or any kind of struggle is a sign of weakness. By talking about depression and anxiety with people, first you realize that you're not alone and that a lot of other people, if not most people, go through these things.
Welcome to another episode of the Common Podcast, where we speak upon common sense and realize it really isn't that common. In the year 2020, studies show that there was a recorded 45,979 suicides, 80% of those being from men. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about men's mental health. I think there's no question that mental illness is a serious, real thing, and based off of this stat, men are struggling. But today we want to talk about the devil in the details, the source of what's going on. I think that there's no question that there is a demand of performance put on men and a standard, but we really want to talk about what is going on, how are men feeling, and what are some things that we can do in order to prevent things like this. I hope that you all enjoy this episode. If you're a new listener, you can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and almost anywhere else that you can find podcasts. If you want to engage with us, interact, maybe pitch a topic, or be a part of the podcast, the best way to get in contact with us is going to be through Instagram. The handle is The Real Common Podcast. On this podcast, we are now uploading every Wednesdays and Fridays. So if you're not following, make sure you follow because you're going to miss it. Thank you all so much, and we'll catch y'all in the next episode. Peace. Mr. Freddie, welcome back.
Welcome back, sir.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm excited to have you back. It's been about a year and a half since you've been on the show.
Yeah.
And I think, production has changed. The room hasn't really changed much. Mm-hmm. The production has changed a lot. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited to have you back on. And especially for the topic that we're going to have today, because I think it's very important. I've kind of had sub conversations about it, but this is the first time that on the podcast, I think we're going to attack men's mental health in this way directly. So I think it's an important conversation to have. Before I get into the conversation, I just want to do a couple of plugins for the new listeners that are here. You can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and almost anywhere else that you can find podcasts. And if you want to pitch a topic, I'm also doing live Q&As every single week. It's going to be on Instagram. The handle is going to be The Real Common Podcast. Also, I want to give a big shout out to my good friend. Her name is Lynn Lee. She did this artwork for me, which is extremely amazing. I thought I'd shout her out, and she is a listener of the podcast. But Freddie, we're gathered here today, brother, to talk about men's mental health. And you kind of wanted, so I was going to talk about this on my second podcast, and I had told you, and you were kind of like, hey, I wouldn't mind, having a discussion about men's mental health. What really spoke out to you about mental health in the light of men?
I kind of feel like mental health is not, I think we don't take it seriously. Mm-hmm. I think it's like I said, it's not taken seriously. But I think what I noticed for example, now in this age of era, for example, one thing I noticed about men is that if you notice of all the shootings in Las Vegas, all the shootings, for the past 50 some years, there has never been a woman shooter. If you really think about it,
a woman shooter. You think that has to do with anything of just men being more primal, aggressive people, other than as opposed to women?
What I feel is I think men they have so much pressure. I noticed that it wasn't that much pressure in the 50s, 70s, but I noticed that 70s, 90s, I think more in the social media age, there has been more shootings because you can go live in shootings and that's, that's what I noticed. I noticed that there has been more shootings and every guy wants to be, I guess, on top, but I do notice that they deal with something mental.
Oh yeah, definitely. There is definitely a demand of performance from male. Mm-hmm. That's there's no question about that. There is a standard that men need to be competent. They need to be at the top, right? And I think this is a never-ending thing, an ongoing thing. You can always do better, and you're always expected to do better as far as men go. But I wanted to talk about this. And the reason why I want to go about it as far as talking about men, because women also do go through, you know, mental health illnesses and issues, right? But in 2020, there was a study done where 45,979 people were recorded suicide victims, and 80% of those were men. So there's obviously a huge tilt being in the men side of, you know, the whole spectrum. And I think that is something important to talk about. So I think the question is why? Why is it 80% men? Why is the majority men that are committing suicide? That's an important issue, and I think that it all goes down to the standard that the social standard that men have as opposed to women, because women have a lot of other things to deal with. Women are strong beings. I don't want to knock women here, right? Women have children, which is a difficult thing. Yeah. And they're, for the most part, responsible for taking care of them and whatnot. But men have something that there is this stigma, right? There's a stigma that men really can't show any weakness. They can't show any vulnerability. They can't really speak out. And if you do that, you kind of like, you start to not...
weak.
Well, you look weak, right? But you're not trying to get on top of that hierarchy. If anything, you're lowering yourself. You're just looked upon as very incompetent and, like you said, a weak person. I think fundamentally that's where men really struggle with, because they know if I'm struggling and I'm weak, nobody's gonna want me, right? Yeah. That goes back to the demand of performance. I think Chris Rock said it perfectly. Yeah. Right? I don't know if you've seen that clip.
Yeah, I've seen it where dogs are...
The only people that are loved unconditionally are dogs, females, and kids. Men are only loved upon the things that they provide. Right, yeah. And that's 100% true. Men have to create value. The women, kids, they're seen as very precious things, and regardless, I mean, but for men, I gave this example the other day on the second podcast. My second podcast is, what if I decided that work is just way too stressful for me and I don't want to work anymore? Yeah. And I couldn't pay the house. I couldn't pay the car. I couldn't provide for my family. So we had to go move back in my parents' house. And then my wife was the only one working. How would people look upon me?
Or people who think that you're weak.
I'm a low life. I'm weak. I'm nothing. Exactly. So, but now let's look at the opposite side of the spectrum. My wife is pregnant. She has our child, and she says, I want to stay home and take care of the kid. And let's say I had a job that I was able to do that, right? You know what? I make enough money. I agree with you. You go ahead and stay home. You take care of the kids, and I'll take care of all the financial. Yeah. Nobody say that's wrong, right? That's totally fine. You know, that's a dream. That's an agreement that they have made upon each other. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, on the opposite side, let's say I was the stay-at-home dad, and then my wife was the one making all the bank, all the bread, and I was at home. I would look silly, right? Yeah. And I was live streaming yesterday, and I was talking to this female in the chat, and I had talked about that. And they said, no, I don't think it is like that. But I don't think females truly understand what men have to go through and the scrutiny that other men put on them. Yeah. Right? Because maybe a female might understand that. But me looking at you, like if you did that, I would be like, hey, what's going on with Freddie? He's a stay-at-home dad. Like, doesn't want to work. He doesn't have any ambitions. That is the stigma behind the demand of performance and men having to go out there and provide. I think that's at the basis level. What are some things that you've kind of like experienced with that?
Personally, like for example, how can I say this? It's being a man now in this era. It's like it's real hard, man. Like because the thing is like, if you decide to take off, like I said, if you decide to take off, you feel weak, like in life in general. You know, you can't take a break from being a dad or you know, it's just, it's real hard, man. Like, because some people don't understand, like, when being a man in this world is that you're constantly being watched. Every move you make is you're being watched. Any mistake, you're gonna be criticized. You're gonna be criticized for any kind of mistake that you do as a man. And it sucks. It really does suck like that happens.
How comfortable are you with talking about your problems, your feelings with other men? Generally, obviously, I think you might have maybe one or two people that that are men.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, how willing are you to like speak to other men?
It's hard to talk to a man because you kind of if I want to talk to you or if I want to talk to a guy, a friend, you kind of withdraw back because you're like, no, I don't want him to think like I'm a wuss, or you don't want to be that way. A woman, for example, they can go to their friends and they can go like to their dinners and their brunch, and they could fully express who they are, and they're not gonna get any like lashback. They're not gonna be like saying, oh, you're weak, or you're this, you're that. You don't get that.
Yeah.
As a man, if I talk to another man about it, it's like you will seem like you're weak. Another man that's probably like, let's say you, for example, you're one of those guys that are tough nosed, hard nosed, like, dude, like, stop being a wuss. I want to say, keep on going, but like, and it'll hurt you. But that's the thing. Like, when people don't know that, some women don't understand that part of being a man.
Yeah, definitely. There's some ignorance in that as well, though, right? I feel like some men, even if sometimes smarter, is even looked upon as negligence. So what I mean is, like, you see like a construction worker, like somebody like a blue collared hardworking man, and you see another guy who is very smart, who does an office job, makes a decent amount of money. The construction worker, the blue collared guy, would look at him and be like, nambe, like, look at him, he's stuck in the office, like he doesn't do any man work, or he doesn't go out and make his money. So I think also with the whole hierarchy thing that I was talking about earlier, men are kind of really dumb about how they really degrade other men.
Yeah.
And I want to lead into that later on in the conversation. But that just proves to me personally that we kind of do it to ourselves. Like, men kind of do it to ourselves. Like, there is a standard done but by men. And the same thing with women, because women do this with beauty, right? The girl always wants to be more beautiful than the girl next to them. That's why they buy the makeup, the better makeup. That's why they dress a certain way. They're always doing things. And it's always like who can be the prettier person. But for men, it's like, who can be the hardest worker? Who can make the most money?
Yeah.
Right? All this stuff. I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, because I worked in both kind of positions where I was because I used to be a mechanic. I used to be that hardworking, like, hardworking guy, you know. But now I'm doing an office job. I see the difference, because I remember when I was outside, man, the guys outside, these guys are inside, they're in the AC, todo tranquilo. And they're like, oh, they don't have to handle it. They don't have to handle the
They
cold.
can't do what I do.
They can't do what I do. You need me, and I don't need you. There was a time where I was like that. Where I was like, I would, when I was young, being in a dealership, I'm like, you guys I don't need you, because the thing is that I can fix a car. A customer can come to me, he can tell me what he needs, and I'll fix it, but we don't need you. But then as I grew into the business, like, in reality, we do need them, because the thing is that because they help us sell. We help each other out.
Yeah, and I don't take you as somebody who is very, like, a harsh person. So this is what I'm trying to say is, I think that we're groomed, right, from very young, right? And we heard, I talked about this on another podcast that I had about why men hide their emotions. And a lot of it has to do with the way that we're raised, right? Man up. Don't be a wuss. That's for girls. Don't show your emotions. Keep all of that sheath, right? Because true men are strong, and they
macho, and and the thing is that, if you cry, I think, like, I feel like if you cry in front of a woman, like, like you're risking it.
Oh yes,
like
100%.
you're risking it because you're gonna risk it because it's kind of like really. But the thing is that I think they don't understand that. Like you gotta understand is like we're all men are grown to hold their feelings. Even from pee-wee football, from like I said, we're all grown to hold our feelings inside. So we cry to you. Some women see it as a weak thing, but I think if they're doing it closed doors, I think that's where I think women should understand. It's like, yo, he's being vulnerable. He trusts you. He doesn't, because we can't cry. I can't cry in front of another man. Because if we cry in front of him, I mean, if we're not gonna if we can't even say our problems to him, what makes you think we're gonna cry in front of another man?
100%. And so this is where this is what I think about that. I think there's two opposite sides of the spectrum. I think there is the super hard-nosed guy, as you describe him as, the guy that doesn't show his emotions, the guy that nobody wants to talk to because, he seems like a very tough individual, right? He's an honorable man, whatever. Then there's the super emotional guy, the weakling, whatever, who's always he's crying. He's the crybaby, right? I think there's a delicate balance. I think there's a delicate balance in the middle, because I think the hard-nosed guy, the blue-collared guy, I think those are the ones that end up being depressed later on in life. Yeah. Right? Because they hoard all those emotions in. Later on in life, they're going to feel that, and then that's going to overtake them. Pop. Exactly. Now, on the opposite side, the crybaby guy, that person is not really going to get much in life, because it is true that if a guy is overly emotional, he is not going to really get anywhere, right? In that hierarchy. Nobody's going to respect that person. I think there's a balance in the middle. Yeah. I think what it comes down to is self-awareness for a man to be able to understand when and where can I be vulnerable. What are some things that I do need to just nut up, shut up, and just work it out, just kind of, be a hard-nosed man. And then when are some times that I can be emotional and things along those lines. Like Jordan Peterson says this very good, where he says that men should be ferocious. Men should be just animals, just beasts, but they should learn how to control it. Yeah. You want a guy who's going to go out there in the world and just destroy everything in his way in order to provide for his family. But the moment that he walks through the door, he loves his family. The kids are on top of him. He kisses his wife on the cheek, and they have a good, right? He's a very delicate person at home, but he's a warrior out there. Yeah. Here's what we don't get: if a guy is delicate all the time, he's not going to make it out in the world. And he's going to come home and he's going to be too soft. Yeah. So what you want is a guy who is self-aware enough, who knows when to dominate and knows when to be vulnerable and emotional.
And it takes time to learn that. It's a skill where you have to learn that skill of when is it a good time to cry? Because to me, my opinion is that I feel like it's okay to cry sometimes, but not I think not in front of everybody. Yeah. But I think only to people that for sure are going to be there for the rest of your life. When I cry, it's I rarely cry in front of my parents. Rarely. It's so rare. I think I've only cried in front of them a couple of times. Less than a handful of times in my whole adult life. Relationship wise, I've cried before, but it's because the thing is that I think it's because it's more an exhaustion, not more like an exhaustion, because me, I mean, I'm trying to still, I mean, like I said, I told you about my goals. I'm trying to do some certain things, but there's some things that you have to balance. It's hard to balance everything out because I used to be in a relationship, like I said, in a 9-year relationship where I worked so hard. Like I said, I worked so hard, did everything for her son, raised them, did everything, but yet it was so frustrating to the point where she would say, "You're not here enough. You're not here enough." And then that ended up me being cheated on multiple times because I was not around, because I was too busy. and that's what sucked. And that's what I learned is like, and it's hard because like I said, I had that kind of relationship where I was working too much, but then I would be in another relationship where I'm too much.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of hard because you kind of want to you want to satisfy them like as much as you can, but you know, I mean, I want to do my goals, but it's kind of hard knowing that it's hard because if I do my goals, then I'm not focusing as much, and then you kind of get carried away and you go cheat or whatever, and you
Yeah.
and that's what sucks. I mean, that's what happened to me personally.
Listen, guys, are y'all tired of being fat and unhealthy? Look, I feel you. I've struggled with weight loss for a majority of my life, but I recently lost 32 pounds. I want to tell y'all exactly how I did it. I changed my diet. I ate a little bit healthier. I know how hard that can be with so much convenient fast food restaurants, convenient grab and go foods that you can just pick up and go. But I want to show y'all a way where y'all can stay convenient and eat a bit healthier. That's why I want to tell y'all about my good friends at Primitive Eats. It's a local, homegrown, small business that is a meal prep company. And they are derived off the paleo diet. Really quickly, paleo is just a natural way of eating food. Taking out simple carbs, sticking to the earth. Okay? It is very good for you. It's very healthy for you, and you can support a local small business. It's always great. So if you're in the Los Fresnos, Brownsville, or Harlingen, San Benito area, go check them out. They have plans where you can buy for the full week. They will deliver it for you. Quick, easy, and go, and it's super delicious. They support the podcast. I support them. Go check them out. And if you don't want to get their meal plan, listen, check out their Instagram. That is Primitive Eats 90. I'm going to leave it in the description. If you're not going to follow them for the meal preps, follow them for their memes because their memes are hilarious. Also, little quick fun fact, they do raffles, which I recently won concert tickets on their page. True story. Go check them out. I support Primitive Eats. Primitive Eats supports the podcast, and we love them. Go check them out. I mean, the good thing about that is you're able to identify that now just based off of that experience. I feel like a lot of the times the issue might be too blurry where you can't even identify it. I'll give it like a personal experience. Mm-hmm. I think it was like last year. I don't know what it was. It was maybe just the burden of life that overcame me. Here's the thing, right? You and I, we live in America. We live, generally speaking, very good lives, right? Yeah. We're not in a different country struggling to eat, all these things. So if you really sat down and thought about it, we have a lot more things to be thankful for than we have, you know, to worry about.
Yeah.
Really. And so that's why I think that's a very important mantra to think about when men are going through situations like this. Think about things like, I have it a lot better than a lot of other people out there. Yeah. I think that's important. But going back to the story, I woke up and I felt this overwhelming sense of like depression and anxiety, and I didn't know what it was. I can't put it into words, but I just remember feeling like I wasn't where I needed to be in life, and I made possibly wrong decisions, and am I doing things right? All these things. Do I have the right job? Everything. And I remember texting my best friend. I go to work like around 3 a.m. Texting my best friend. I was like, hey, I really don't know what's going on, but I feel very, very heavy right now in emotion.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to put it into words, but I just feel scared.
Like lost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had to really think to myself, like, okay, what's wrong? Like, what's going on with me? And I couldn't put it into words. I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I just feel like this overwhelming feeling. And so my buddy, he ended up calling me maybe like around noon, time he woke up, and he's like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, I'm a lot better now, but I couldn't explain it. And that's not something that happens to me often. It just happened at that time. But when I came home, after I got over that, I came home and I told my wife about it, and she didn't know how to handle it. But I comfort her and I tell her, look, I'm okay. Everything's gonna be fine. We're fine. I don't want to talk about it, but I just want to let you know that this is how I felt. So if I feel it again, maybe tomorrow, or if you see me a little off, that's why. Don't worry about it. Everything's gonna be fine. And that's the way I handled it. But I think a lot of people will go through that, where they're going through a tough time and you ask them, or they're going through like anxiety and depression, you ask them and they really don't know how to put it into words.
Yeah, it's just this kind of like you're not there. Like it's kind of like I went through that too, where it's like where you kind of feel like, what am I doing? Like what am I doing? Like what am I doing in this life? Like what is my purpose? Like you kind of feel, I don't know, it's hard to explain it, but it's a weird feeling where you're like, you get that anxiety coming in, kicking in, and stuff like that. So, I mean, I get you. I've done that. I've been through that as well, and it sucks. But the benefit for you, like I said, the benefit for you was like you were able to tell someone.
Yeah. So that's huge. So identifying the issue, and then actually the big step is knowing you have a problem, right? That you're struggling mentally, and then actually being able to speak out to somebody. That's the biggest hurdle. And this was done in a study. Doctors were talking about it, how the biggest hurdle is actually telling people, voicing it out, saying that you have an issue. Men have a hard time. There was a survey done with 1,001 men. 46% of the men were embarrassed to discuss mental issues with friends. 49% were more depressed they were more depressed than what they actually admitted that they were. Right? So 46% out of 1,000 men, that's almost 50%, were too embarrassed to admit that they had a mental issue, that there was something going on in them, and they just felt like they couldn't express that, right? Which is a big deal. That's a big hurdle. That's the start, I believe, of recovery. I had a podcast about this. I think the title is The Importance of Communication. And I talk about how important it is to understand that you need to be able to have certain avenues, certain people in your life that you can talk about things, right? Because I believe personally that my wife doesn't understand the burden of performance of men. So me speaking to her about those issues, she won't necessarily understand it, and she won't know what to say back, right? But I have a best friend that I can, talk to him about these things, right? I have several friends that was like, okay, like this person's going to understand this. And if I express these, it's going to be properly appreciated, and I might get some very good feedback, right? Feel safe. Yeah, so the importance of conversation, I think, it's huge. And I think that
and it's hard to admit like something. It's hard like saying something that you have a problem or something's going on, just by admitting it. Like it's hard because it's like you don't know what backlash you're gonna get. You don't know. And if you talk to your woman like, hey, I have this, majority of the time they're not gonna know, which is understandable. But the point is you're able to express. I think that's where it kind of that monkey off your back a little bit. It's just like you're able to open about it, because like by holding it in, I mean it's just harder, because I mean it is harder.
Okay, so this is huge, right? So how do you learn to be more open with your emotions? Somebody had asked me that the other day, and I told this person, because they told me like, well, they asked me, how are you so open about your personal life on social media, more so on the podcast, and like, this person struggles with communicating with other people, right? And it's like, man, I just think you're so brave, they told me, for talking about hard topics online. How do you do that? And I think the biggest thing for me was learning that 80% of all people have things in common. So you have, no matter the gender, no matter the person, 80% of us, we all relate to it. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. We all suffer through some type of difficulties. We all go through death in the family. We all get sick. We all have trials, tribulations. We all have these things. We all have very similar struggles.
Yeah.
And so identifying that we are 80% similar, identifying that we all go through a lot of the same issues, I thought, well, if we're all struggling with this, why should I be afraid of talking about it? Because chances are the person on the other side of this microphone, the person that's listening to the podcast right now, is also going through this issue. They just don't voice it because they're too scared about being judged.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important thing about communication, is understanding that a lot of people, 80% of people, are going to be able to relate to you.
Yeah.
So do not be afraid to express that. Now, communication and emotional communication is totally different. So like we talked about in the beginning, being emotional, being vulnerable, that's totally different. What I get on here, I'm not emotional, I'm not vulnerable per se. I'm just communicating different aspects of life, right? I'm not over here being extremely vulnerable,
You're not being
although
a
sometimes
victim, like, oh,
Exactly,
You're
exactly.
not like it's kind of, you're giving your experience. Like, for example, like when you had me here, you know, I mean, I just did it right now talking about I was cheated on. You know, we all been, I mean, not most of us, but I know how it feels to be cheated on.
Yeah.
I don't mind if somebody asks me, like, if somebody comes up to me and say, hey, how's it feel when you were cheated on? I'm like, I mean, it sucks, but you know, you're gonna have to keep on going. But you know, it sucks. But if you need to talk to someone, I'm here. And being overweight, you want to talk to me, come talk to me. No matter, like, you can come talk, because I've been through that. So
Yeah.
you know, and I think that's where we kind of see that we are humble of what we've gone through and who we are. Like, we become more humble, because you know, if somebody told me, oh, I've been cheated on, I could be a jerk and be like, so I mean, too bad, like, go. I want to say it, but it's like I would rather like talk to them about it, because I know how it's been being alone when you can't talk to your parents about it because being cheated on, because you feel embarrassed. you feel embarrassed.
I think that's a great example, actually, because being cheated on is something that you're not happy about, right? That's not something that you're proud of, right?
No.
And so if anything, you're more embarrassed, right?
Yeah.
That's not something that you want to go out and say, right? But that is something that you can describe, like how you described, a monkey on your back, that, you know, a burden that you could be holding on to. And the fact is, a lot of people may not want to talk about those things, right? Because they're scared of being judged or made look weak and being embarrassed. But the fact is, you coming out and talking about that, or anybody coming out and talking about their experience, there's a lot of other people that can relate with your story, and maybe they can learn from that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
because like for me, when I was cheated on, the first time was like some guy, and the second time was another one. But then the third time, that's where I kind of felt like less than a man. And I couldn't tell. That was so hard, because I mean, I was cheated on those two times, but when I told my parents, when I was able to tell my parents, I told them what happened. When I told them that I was cheated, but when I told them that the third time when I was cheated on, that it was when a woman, that was like really big. I felt like less of a man, because what went through my mind was like, oh, if people find out that Freddie got cheated on by a girl, like, is gonna think like, oh, is he bad performance in bed, or you know, all these things that come up to me. And it's like, but the thing is that what I found, like, as years went on, and then recently, actually, I actually met the parents of my ex, of the 9-year one, and she, like, the parents were telling me like, so Mijo, like, you did everything well. I don't know why she cheated on you. It was like so terrible. But like I said, finding out that you were cheated on because of a woman, I hope you know that it wasn't because of your performance. It's like, it was nothing that, and I felt like a burden was off my back, because I felt like it was probably because I wasn't good in bed or anything. But the thing is that I'm not trying to be cocky, but it's like I knew it wasn't that. But it's just like that always made me feel like less of a man. But when I told my parents about that, like, I was so scared, because it was like, I hope they don't seem like they they're not embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
But even and I tell people now, like, if they ever find out, like, yeah, that they're one my girl or my actually cheating on me with a girl. I mean, but don't think it's because of your performance. You know, it's just something happens. It's just sometimes something happens. And I felt like that guy from Friends, that
the nice guy,
the nice
clip.
guy he got cheated on with, and I when I saw that episode that he was cheated on by a woman, you know, I kind of felt similar. But you know, it just happens. You know, sometimes a woman finds love some other way, but what can you do but just keep on moving on and don't let that hurt you. But it did make me feel like less than man. Like I felt like such a little like just puny, man. Like it sucked.
Amor fati. That's what amor fati is. I talked about this right yesterday.
I was like, I saw that yesterday. I was like, well, I was gonna ask you like, what is that? Like
on my live stream, yeah. So I've been studying a lot of Stoic philosophers in our past, in our history, and Marcus Aurelius, he had this mantra of amor fati, which means love fate, regardless of the good and the bad. And a great philosopher of today's age, I think his YouTube channel is Daily Philosophy. His last name's Holiday. Great guy. And he talks about, you know, Marcus Aurelius mantra, and he gives an example of being cheated on. How you have two options. You can learn to love the fate, or you can learn to hate the fate. If you choose to love the fate, that's amor fati. What you learn from that is you forgive the experience, but you gain what you can and you apply it to your life in the future, right? So what are some things you have to own? The adversity, you have to own it, you have to have accountability and say, what are some things that I did wrong? What are some things that I was oblivious to, and how can I apply that into my future relationship?
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Or you can hate fate, and you can say, why me? I did not deserve this.
Yeah.
This experience is horrible. I hate that person. I hate this. And then what's going to happen is that person's going to go on and live their life.
Yeah.
And you're going to live a very resentful life. And then you're going to pass on that baggage to the next relationship. And what's going to happen is that relationship is going to be less likely to work out because they're having to deal with something that they didn't even have part in. Right. Yeah. And so basically what ends up happening is your life is either you have the option to make it better or worse just by reacting to the situation.
And that's the thing, like what I learned is that I learned from what happened, and I looked at it, I was like, was I working too much? And then I was like, you know what, probably I wasn't paying attention. And I looked at my mistakes. And yeah, there are some mistakes that I did probably just by probably not focusing.
I don't know if it was your fault though, Reddy.
But like I'm just saying like how can I say this?
Here's what I think about you, Freddie. I like you a lot. Like I see you as like a really cool friend, and I love to have you. And you're like one of the sponsors of the podcast. I think that you might be a little bit too oblivious. I think you might be too nice.
That's the thing I've been told. Like I've been too nice. Like I'm too nice.
I think you come off as somebody that people can take advantage of you easy, and that's obviously put you befriending horrible people. That's gonna happen, right? You having friends that don't care about you, it's gonna happen. But I think you need to learn how to not be so oblivious and take yourself away from people like that. Does that make sense? But yeah, anyways, go ahead.
No, and that's what I'm saying. Like I try to ask myself, okay, what did I do wrong? I was like, maybe I did do work, but then like as time moved on, when I have more time to myself, I learned I didn't do anything wrong. She just messed up. Like
she just belonged to the streets.
She just belonged to the streets, and I was like, you know, and I was like, you know, and that's the thing. Like when you get cheated on, you ask yourself, what did I do wrong? What did I do? And then as time went on, and I was like by myself, I was like, yo, you know, I didn't do anything wrong. I did everything that I know I did everything wrong. You messed up.
Yeah, the thing you probably did wrong was ignore the red flags. You probably you forgave her. Those are the things that you...
Well, the thing is that the reason why I forgave was because I did it for her son.
Yeah, but
And it
That's-
is hard. It sucks because the thing is, like, I mean, I was with him. Like I said, I asked a party earlier in the primitive page. I put, like, somebody asked me, do I have kids? And I said no, but I said, well, you know, I was in a 9-year relationship, and I was there, like, basically what I noticed is, like, I was there towards the end just for him. Because I felt like if I walked out of him, it, like, his dad walked out, like, was never there. But then that's when I just said, you know what, I'm done. Like, my life is more, I can't be with your mom with what she did. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah.
I gotta go. And it sucked because that was the hardest thing for me, because he didn't deserve that.
Well, you see, the thing is, like, even though you think you're doing a good thing, it could be self-sabotaging to the kid too, because if he sees someone like you who is so willing to be there for him, and then his mom taking advantage of that, he can think in his head that, oh, maybe that's what men are supposed to do. Maybe men are supposed to be taken advantage of. Maybe men are supposed to be treated like crap by women. And then he can grow up and get into a toxic relationship.
Yeah, and that's what I think I had a conversation with my mom about that. She's like, he might see it differently, though. He might be a chance that he might see it like, okay, I might take it to aprovechar, and, like, a women could to be in a toxic relationship. And so I just had to cut it off. Once I cut it off, you know, it was hard because, I mean, you're letting go of a kid, you know, that you see grew up from diapers, and it was hard. But after that, it took me a while, but, you know, thankfully I was able to get better. And then I had that problem with going to the ER, but lost weight, and then primitive, and now I am here, you know. And so I'm happy where I'm at right now, my point in my life. I mean, right now. But do I want to improve? Of course I want to improve. I want to get better. There's some goals that I have that I'm working on, and hopefully I get it up and running. But you know, it's I learned from everything from that relation. I learned from that and some other ones as well, you know. And that's the thing, like, and this is where mental health comes in. Is like, I did something when I went into another relationship, I did, like, things differently, but yet they were like for example, I was more of a gentleman, you know. I was being super more gentleman. The girl will be like, no, I don't like men opening my doors, or you know, it was like the complete opposite. And you're like, okay, well, you know, my parents even taught me that, to open doors for women, give them flowers and everything, but it was like, she didn't like it. And it sucked. So then you get into another relationship, and you notice, like
well, I think that you shouldn't be changing who you are, right? So there's a psychologist that talks about this, and he says, in pursuit of finding your princess, do not become the prince that, okay, so in pursuit of finding the princess, you must become the prince that you want the princess to want, right? So for instance, if you want a girl, right, you want a female in your life, you have to become the man that will attract the female. Don't focus on the female and satisfying that. Become the man that will attract the female. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, and
become the prince, and then those options will present themselves, which means basically focus on your grind, focus on your purpose. And once you focus on your purpose, that will align itself. But if you keep trying to, like, shift change yourself, makeshift yourself to fit the girl, it's never going to work, because you can only fake it, or not fake it, but you can only change yourself for so long.
No, I get you. And when I was reading that book, and then I started hearing more of his dialogue of Jordan Peterson, you know, I kind of clicked. And now it's like, now I have, like, a different mentality. Like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on my goals. Like, I'm just gonna focus on my goals and doing what I want. I mean, that it'll come in whenever it'll come in. But right now, I'm just gonna be focusing on my goals. And then, like I said, I have a timetable. I have to give myself a timetable on that. So the goals that I want to meet.
Yeah.
And right now, just focusing on the goals right now. that right now, that right now a relationship, I think it'll come in whenever it comes in.
Another thing that is found in mental disorder and anxiety and depression is the lack of purpose. I think the number one thing for depression was aimless people. So people that do not have a goal, people that are, they basically serve no substance to the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had a conversation with somebody not too long ago, and they're going through a pretty rough time, and they said, I feel useless to the world. I feel like I'm better off not here. And I said, okay, what does your day consist of? And it really wasn't much. And so I said, okay, if your day doesn't consist of much, it is probably likely that you're not providing much substance, which means you really aren't that much. So what you have to do is you have to decide that I want to be somebody, but that in order to be somebody, I need to set goals for myself, and I need to set challenges for myself. And once you start to accomplish those, like getting a job is a simple one, right? It's like, I need to provide, so let me get a job. And once you get a job, you start getting the paychecks. Those are like incentives of giving back, right? But yeah, I think people finding a purpose, finding aim, finding goals, accomplishing goals is a great way to take your mind off of depression, anxiety, and it gives you a good sense of accomplishment and proper well-being.
Yeah, it's a reason to wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
You know that, and you know, because of that, you know, ever since I started like reading and like realizing what I really wanted, my goals, it makes me wake up a little bit more like urgent. Like, okay, now I have a purpose to wake up. There's a reason why I'm wake up. And there's a reason why I'm going to work. There's a reason why I'm doing primitive eats more aggressively, you know, and like you said, be a monster. And that's why I'm trying to be more of a monster on that, on primitive eats, you know, trying to make more meals, trying to expand a little bit further, because usually it's just here, but people meal preps usually it's just so brown, like one area, but I'm trying to expand bigger, and I'm willing to take like trying to go bigger and expand for that future when it comes in.
Yeah, I saw this clip the other day. It's like, man, you should be working towards things that make you forget to eat. And I was like, man, like I remember when I first did my first physical transformation, I would be so into like reading and so into watching other videos and learning that sometimes I'd be like, oh dang, like I you know, I'm over here like halfway through the day and I haven't eaten or stuff like that. And so I really started to ask myself the other day, I was like, okay, like you're doing the podcast, you want to do all these other things, but are you really putting the effort in? Are you managing your time well? And then I saw that clip and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start hitting it hard. That's why I'm starting to do the lives every day, the Q&As. I want to do 2 podcasts a week. I started up a reaction channel, which that's going to be launching pretty soon here. And so that really gave me maybe like an eye opener, I guess you can say, to like really hunker down and work hard.
Yeah, because like I said, when I was reading all his quotes and books, like when I was reading those few pages, you know, it was like an eye opener to like keep like to focus on your goals. Just really focus on my goals. And that's what I really want, is just focus on my goals and just try to get there, because everything else will fall into place when the time comes.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, I know that you were talking about on the other podcasts about how, you know, you were talking about, it was another one that you were talking about of men being weak. How to say this? Like, how do you feel if a man comes up to you crying? You know, like, how does that make you feel if a man comes up to you crying?
It makes they seem a bit weaker than.
But like, it's a close friend of yours, like.
Oh.
Like if a close friend of you just comes out and he's like, hey man, like, he just lashes out busting out crying.
Oh, immediately I go to their aid. Me personally, I'm like, hey man, what's wrong? Because me personally, I don't befriend very emotional men. So like, if I know that they're crying, I know it has to be something extremely important and urgent. So if somebody comes to me crying, I'm just like, hey bro, like what's going on? Like
Yeah.
let's talk about it. What can I do to help you?
And it sucks that we live in this kind of thing where you can't express it to, you know, you have that mentality like, if I tell my best friend, if I tell my buddy, he's gonna probably think like, dude, you're kind of weird.
Yeah, 100%. I practice daily communication with my friend, and we're always talking about daily struggles. So, talking about things that bother you daily, or I wouldn't even say daily, just religiously, like, you know, often, is very healthy, because you don't want to bottle those things up until they're molehills. Like, you don't want something so small that you could have just talked about.
Yeah.
You don't want that growing into something that is going to overweigh you and take a toll on your mental health and your emotions and stuff like that. So yeah, my buddy and I, which I have the second podcast with, we practice this on a daily basis. Like, we talk to each other at like 3 p.m. every single day, and it's like, hey bro, like what's going on? Oh, this, or right, whatever. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, and it just really sucks that, like, as well, like, if you kind of like you open up to a woman, it makes you look weak. But I mean, I think a woman should if he does it every other day or every other month, then yeah.
Well, yeah, you see, the thing is, women want to help men with their mental illnesses, right? There was a study done that women were like, yes, I would love, but that's also a delicate balance too. Like you were saying, is like, you don't want an over emotional man, but you do want a partner that because women motivate men. That is a true thing. Like, if you're in a spot, I mean, everything we pretty much do
is
motivated by women.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I want a girlfriend. Okay, I need to go out there and work hard.
Yeah.
In order to build equity, in order to get a woman. And then once you have that woman, you get married. It's like, okay, I need to go out there and work hard to provide for my family. Right? Pretty much everything a man
it sucks
does.
for those men that can't get money, and then they get depressed because they can't get to that financial.
What do you mean they can't get money?
Like, let's say they can't. Like, let's say they a guy that works like at a low income job, right? I'm pretty sure he feels like he can't get the girl that he wants. You know, if he tells a girl like, oh, I do this, I do like this low paying job. You know, women is not going to be attracted to that.
Well, yeah, so he needs to get a better job.
Yeah, he needs to get a better job. But then, like, if he can't, like, let's say he can't because of some reason, you know, he's still going to be... That's where I feel it leads more into... They kind of feel stuck. They get depressed, and they bottle up with all this anger.
Yeah, but for me, it's like the guy has to be you see, and I'm kind of feeding into this like whole stigma, right? But I think the man has to be undeniable in the way that he goes about his life. So if you're not making enough money, or if you're in a very low status place, I think a guy needs to do absolutely everything in his power to become a better man, not just to attract females, but for himself too. Because I think somebody at that level is going to suffer from depression and anxiety anyways, from lack of purpose. But
yeah, I was just like I said, that's what I was thinking as well, of just that.
Yeah, because like, I know for me at work, there's this one guy that is always complaining about everything. He's like he's the crybaby, and I'm guilty, bro. I don't see that guy with any respect. Like, I'm just like, oh man, this guy's he doesn't shut up. Like,
you kind of like, it's fastidioso. Like, dude,
there's something always wrong with this guy. Like, I don't want to be around that guy because he's just way too vocal. He's way too emotional. Like, dude, we're all going through the same thing. Right. We have the same job. They shut up and get to work. Yeah. So it is a real thing, but. Like I said, there is like a delicate balance, because if you come to a guy that never speaks out about, like, if there's a guy that never complains, never speaks out emotionally, and then he does it, guess what? People are going to take him serious, right? Yeah. And like, this guy never says things like this, so I need to take this serious. But if there's it's kind of like that the boy who cried wolf story, right?
Yeah.
He goes to the village. Oh, there's wolves chasing me, right?
Yeah.
People come. There's no wolf. Second time he comes, there's wolf chasing me.
Yeah.
People come, no wolf.
No wolf.
Third time, there's wolves chasing me.
Mm-hmm.
They don't show up.
Yeah.
And there's actually wolves chasing him, and the boy gets eaten. It's the same thing. That's why I think that it's a very delicate thing that men have to be careful with, and understanding when and where.
Yeah, because when I was a manager, I have a couple of guys that were like complaining constantly, and I was like, dude, just like, you guys are on the same boat. You guys are all you guys all have the same position. You guys are all in the same heat. You guys are dealing with the same conditions. Just get to work. I mean, like I said, you guys are all in the same conditions. Just get to work. Focus on getting your commission, go, and that's it. But sometimes these guys just want to keep on complaining, and they just don't get anywhere. And then like probably sometimes they'll probably get fired or they quit.
So there's an important thing about that too, because when I was a manager at a fast food restaurant, my wife worked for me, and I remember she was like one of the ones that voiced it out. Usually people don't voice it out, but I remember I used to be like, man, like I'm sick and tired of this and that. And she had told me one time, well, you're the manager, that's your job, right? And that's kind of like, the whole, that's what people think when they're employees, right? It's like, oh, that's his job. He should be doing this. He should be doing that. Yeah. And then we got married, and then she was now like, why do they have you doing this? Why are you doing that? Mm-hmm. Well, it's my job, right? That's what you said. The thing is, everybody expects me to be that guy, right? Yeah. And I can't complain because it's my job.
Yeah, it's your job.
And that's just, I think that was like a perfect example of the man of performance of men. Is that we're expected to perform at a very, very high level. We don't get rewarded much for it because it's already expected. It's in the standard. It's like, oh, I worked 70 hours this week. Well, good, bro. You're a guy. You're making that money, man. Like that's a good thing. And
but you get tired and stuff like that. I mean, it's like, but it's kind of tough, man. Working 70 hours a week. Yeah, that's pretty tough. That is tough. Anything more than, I think, to me, I think anything more than 40, I think it takes a toll on a human.
Oh yeah. I've been working like 55s for the past few months, bro.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and it takes a toll, man. Like, you're mentally tired. You're doing the same route, like you're doing the same. You're driving back. You're saying the same thing, and it gets physically and mentally tired, and that's where I feel like people don't appreciate some things. Where like they say, oh, like you said, oh, I work 55, 65. Good for you, man. I mean, that's a job, right?
Yeah.
But still.
Is there anything you want to say? I think to just kind of conclude the whole conversation. Bullet points or anything?
I think that mental health should be taken seriously because, it's really hard on, I've seen it on men where I've had men where they come cry to me as well, or they're scared or they're panicking, and I didn't even know they're going through something, and they just pop out of nowhere and they'll call me 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, hey man, what's up? He's like, no, this and this happened. I'm like, dude, and you're trying to calm down. And they'll tell me like, no, I've been holding this so long. I just couldn't hold it. I can't. I just couldn't. I don't have no one to talk to. Mm-hmm. I have no one to talk to. And I think, if you're holding something and you're holding it so long, I think you should kind of like look for someone that you trust. To your boys. I don't think your friends will. That's what I think. Men think that they're going to be looked down, but once you tell them, I don't think they'll like look, they'll say, oh, you're weak. No, it's just tell them. It's the outcome that you think will be, it's not going to be what you think,
Yeah. And I think communicating, it doesn't have to be like all soft and gushy all the time either, right? Like I said, 80% of people is similar. So if you learn how to communicate your issues with people, a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
people won't look at you as weak. That's
No.
what I think.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right, Freddie, look, I appreciate you. I want to
Yeah.
have you back on the podcast. Maybe we
Yeah.
can talk about something else.
Yeah.
But the main thing that I want to talk about or end the podcast is mental health, mental illness rather, is a real thing. If you're going through it, learn, I think, to get over that first hurdle and communicate. I just want to give a shout out to our plug-in of the suicide hotline. If anybody is, on the verge of doing something outrageous like that, the suicide hotline has changed and it's a lot more simple now. It's 988. So go check that out. If obviously you're in a situation like that.
Yeah, but before we hang up, there was I went to this thing in San Antonio, and there was like this place. I went to this thing where it was like I went to San Antonio, and it was an art museum, and there was a section of suicide, like voices, like people talking about how that they want to die, they want to kill themselves, and when you hear these, like I walked past it and I was like, oh, it's nothing. Like I didn't take it kind of seriously. I thought it was just like entertainment. Like they probably put it there like as, like how can I say it? Like, oh,
like just an awareness
just
thing?
awareness, yeah. And when I went, they have like payphones, like a couple of payphones, and you hear all these secrets and that they want to hurt themselves, and I was like, man, like pobrecitos, like
it's a real thing, man. That's what I'm saying is like,
real.
understand that if the listeners here, if you're going through that where you're like super deep in depression and you're even thinking about outing yourself, understand that there's so
Gigs on the track.